And the most comprehensive climate assessment ever undertaken in Australia has been released this morning. The climate risk assessment warns of widespread impacts from sea level rises and an increase in heatwave deaths, even under a best case scenario. Let's go live now to Perth, where reporter Tyne Logan is with us from ABC's National Climate Team. And Tyne, what were some of the major hazards identified in this report?
Yeah, so as you said, this is a very comprehensive report. It goes into a lot of detail, and the risks really do change depending on where you are in Australia. But some of the hazards that have, I guess you'd say, the most wide-reaching impacts that have been highlighted include coastal inundation and erosion from sea level rise and increased frequency of extreme weather events, and also heat. So if I start with coastal inundation and erosion, of course, a lot of Australia lives on the coast, and I say that, being here in Perth, which is a city that's just getting longer and longer because of that. At the moment, coastal communities are seen as having a moderate risk, but what this assessment found is that if the population remains unchanged, the number of people living in high or very high risk areas would triple by 2050 from about 600,000 people today to over 1.5 million people. And places like Queensland's north and Victoria were highlighted as being particularly vulnerable to that threat. Then with regards to heat, I guess, we all know that the number of severe heat days is expected to increase, and what this report is saying is so too are the number of heat-related deaths. This report actually found that under 3 degrees of warming, and it looked at a whole lot of different scenarios, but under 3 degrees, heat-related deaths were projected to quadruple in Sydney and Darwin and triple in Melbourne, Townsville and Perth. And that is not accounting for population growth. So we're talking about some really massive impacts there. And these impacts go beyond just health-related impacts as well. The report identified in Northern Australia that there is a lot of outdoor workers who will be impacted by the increased number of days of severe heat, and that could have economic impacts too.
We heard the Minister speaking of cascading, compounding and concurrent. When you look at that report, the idea of compound and cascading risk, what did he mean by that?
Yeah, so I think this is where the report really stands out from other reports that have been released in the past of similar nature. So basically the idea is what happens when these events don't happen in isolation. So for example, if a storm causes a power outage and then we have a heat wave, what does that mean for the outcome of heat-related deaths if people aren't able to turn on their aircon, for instance? Or if a cyclone turns into a flood event, which then wipes out the road and then impacts supply chain. So these are things that Australia has had to contend with for quite some time now, but it's also something that's expected to happen more often, which then puts pressures on systems which otherwise might have been able to cope.
So what do you expect will be done with this information, and what can be done with it?
Yeah, so I think the government did, see that question coming. What are we going to do about it? Some have even suggested that might be why it was delayed for so long. So this has come alongside the National Adaptation Plan as well. It's pretty broad at the moment, the kind of suggestions on how we adapt. There's been suggestions of perhaps looking at building codes where, infrastructure might be intersecting with some of these increasing risks. But I think the main point seems to be that there should be increased investment in prevention, and that money spent avoiding these scenarios from happening is better than money spent in recovery afterwards. And undoubtedly this will also feed into the 2035 climate targets, which are due out later this week, because a big part of this assessment was looking at how much worse that risk will get the warmer the globe gets. And it is significantly worse when you look at 1.5 degrees compared to 2 degrees of warming, and then again 3 degrees of warming.
Tyne Logan, many thanks for the update.
Thank you.